All right, today's episode of the Press Box Podcast is brought to you by our sponsor, Bonus Room Art. Head to bonusroomart.com today to purchase Jacqueline prints of sports and movie art, plus more, as well as inquire about commissions, and be sure to follow Bonus Room Art on Instagram at Bonus Room Art. You will not regret it. In today's episode, there will be no guest. We will talk a little bit to start off with about the Tennessee head coaching search. We'll get into the college football playoff and those Final Four rankings, and Ralph will tell you about his own experience way back in the 70s playing in Notre Dame and his kind of path he took to the college football postseason. Then I'll finish up with a little NFL talk about the New York Giants, with Ralph being a big New York Giants fan. He, believe it or not, had some thoughts on the Eli Manning situation. So we'll hit those three topics, and here we go.
So we talked to Jonathan Crompton about the coaching search at Tennessee, and we talked to Jim Gaylor about it. And
right.
Obviously, when we talked to Jonathan, we didn't have the revolt.
It was still fairly early in the process. I feel like
it was early in the process. That's right. But obviously, when you thought it couldn't get any worse, it did at Tennessee. So now you're in a situation where you still have no coach. You've got an athletic director fired because of his mishandling of the hiring of Greg Schiano. You've got insinuations that a major donor is pulling the strings of who he wants to have coach. And obviously this former athletic director, Curry, was a hand-picked athletic director by this $1 million donor.
A $1 billion donor.
$1 billion donor, excuse me. So now you have the beloved Phil Fulmer stepping in to save the Tennessee program as the athletic director. So, but we're still no better than we were the day they fired Butch Jones because Tennessee doesn't have a coach.
Right. You're exactly right. I think the whole idea by them bringing in Fulmer is to make people feel like you're in a better spot because he's a well-known face and name. But like you said, they're really in the same spot. So I think that, look, you mentioned the athletic director, first of all. I think that not only did he lose his job because of the mishandling of Schiano, but I think it was just the fact that after that, they approached, 3 or 4 more guys, and it seemed like either they weren't interested because of him or he couldn't get the job done or he just seemed to be inept. So I think that's the reason he got let go. And then obviously, like I said, they bring in Fulmer to try to calm everybody down, but I don't know what really he has in mind at this point.
Well, basically, once the Schiano thing went down, the former athletic director, Curry, became a major contributor to these other coaches' retirement funds because all they were doing was using him to get raises from their current university.
Right.
Because every one of them decided after doing the dance with Tennessee that, they were just going to stay at their old university.
We had after Schiano, which we can talk about in a second, but you had Gundy, right?
Right.
He turned him down.
The mullet man.
The mullet man. Then you had the guy from Purdue, Braum, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Braum.
right. So Braum, he backed out of the deal.
And
then they went to the North Carolina State guy, Doran,
yeah.
right? And then he, like you said, he agreed to a contract extension at North Carolina State after this, like you said, just using them to play his own side there. Which,
right.
And my feeling is, none of those guys really seem to be like when we talked to Crompton, he thought they had to be name guys somewhat. And some of those guys, I heard one guy's take that I guess it was Doran has a similar or the same record in ACC play that Butch Jones had in SEC play.
Exactly.
It's like you're getting the Butch Jones of the ACC.
Exactly.
Which is a guy they just let go. So I don't really know where they're going. But what I wanted to ask you about specifically was you're taking the whole thing, the way the whole Schiano thing went down. Like, what is your opinion on not only them reaching out to him in the first place, but the way the kind of the whole reaction went down?
Well, I think I'll say it this way. Let's put aside the Penn State thing. All right, Greg Schiano was at Penn State. Whether he knew about what was going on there or not is really immaterial right now.
Right.
Okay, he was not the right fit for Tennessee. Okay, I really don't believe he was the right fit. He took a Rutgers program that everybody says he improved the program, which maybe he did.
He was there for 10 years.
But he was there for, it was 500,
right.
okay? And he really didn't leave it in a position where it got better. It actually got worse after he left.
From his peak, yeah.
Exactly. He goes to Tampa Bay. Granted, it's the NFL, but he was pretty much worthless there. A player revolt. I mean, if you read some of the stories of what the players thought of him at Tampa Bay, it was like a mutiny was about to happen.
Got into it with Coughlin after that game about the last second.
That's exactly right. Now he's at Ohio State as a defensive coordinator, but he's not the right fit for Tennessee. Okay, I mean he's just not. And the whole Schiano, there was a movie many years ago. I believe it was called Network News or something with network in it. But there was a classic line in that movie.
The millennials won't get that one.
They won't get that one. I understand that. But there was a classic line that they might remember. And it was, the guy stuck his head out the window and shouted, "I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore." Okay? And he got everybody in the community to say it. That's what the Tennessee fans did. They were so frustrated. Part of it they brought on themselves with the Gruden thing. They thought they were going to get John Gruden. They were never going to get John Gruden.
No, they weren't.
But they had built that up in their mind.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, this out of the darkness comes this Schiano with like an undercover deal that was. So they were mad, and they decided to revolt, and they were able to be successful in that revolt. I don't blame them for that. Okay, I blame Tennessee for having the wrong person in the position to do the coaching search. So the Schiano thing was botched from the start, and he was not the right person for the job, okay? So as you said, I mean, I think you correctly said that they brought Phil Fulmer in, to kind of make people feel, hey, warm and fuzzy. We're back to the way things used to be, okay? But they're no better off right now. I mean, they're still trying to find a coach, and right now it doesn't seem like anybody wants the job.
Yeah. You think about guys, and I've been trying to think about guys that Fulmer might reach out to. You obviously Lane Kiffin's out there. You hear that name. That's a name that Crompton brought up, and I feel like a lot of the Tennessee fans would actually welcome him back, but at the same time, I don't think they're going to go there. And then you think of a guy maybe like Les Miles, SEC coach, name guy, has championship experience. Obviously, he knows what it takes to play against the Alabamas and those guys. I don't know. What do you think about that name? That's a name I thought of recently that you haven't heard talked about a lot, but could be out there.
No, I think Les Miles would be an excellent choice. I think his record in the SEC is 114-34, somewhere in that general vicinity. But I know he's got a tremendous record in the SEC. He won a national championship at LSU. He played for another one at LSU. He's a bit eccentric. I mean, he's not your standard coaching guy. He's a little eccentric, but he's a winner. I mean, he's proved it, okay? So why would you not want that guy to be your head coach? Now they're talking about T. Martin. I've heard all that. All right, T. Martin was the quarterback at Tennessee that led them to the national championship. I understand that. He's a Tennessee guy. That's great. But I don't think he's ready to be a head coach, okay? He was the offensive coordinator at Southern Cal. Great position, okay? But is he ready to be a head coach? I don't know.
I would say probably not. Do you think that the fact that Fulmer's back as AD now makes T. Martin any more likely because they had that player-coach relationship?
It probably makes him more likely. But, to me, why do you think we have the Butch Jones of the world that come from Cincinnati and the Scott Frosts of the world that come from UCF?
Right.
Because you have to have that mid-major interim type head coaching job to give you that experience of running a program.
Sure.
Because when you're an offensive coordinator, you're
it's a lot different than being that guy.
Exactly.
Obviously.
That's exactly right. So that's why I think he's not ready.
Another point about Fulmer, now that he's the AD, like you said, how much control do you really think he has? Or are donors outside going to be still having the control? Or is it thought of as, hey, Fulmer's the guy now, it's all on him?
I think he has more control than the former guy did.
Right.
But still, if you've got a donor out there that's dangling $10 million in front of your face, there's going to be a little bit of a pull, to take that money and give in to some of their demands. But I think he has more control.
And I think he should, because let's just put it out there, everybody knows this. The donors we're talking about also run the Browns, and that's not exactly going well. So
no,
I think the more I guess whatever you want to call it, Tennessee people like Fulmer has been there years and years that have more of their finger on the pulse of the program. I think that can only help.
I also heard that Fulmer botched the Mike Leach deal. That was another name that was out there. Mike Leach, the coach at Washington State.
I know, but did he, or was that?
I don't know.
That was kind of I felt like that was in the interim. Like the Curry was talking to him, and then that's about when Fulmer came in. I don't really know.
I think the idea there is that Mike Leach. We talked about Les Miles being eccentric.
He's way out
Mike
there.
Leach is way out there.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean his YouTube videos are priceless.
Right.
Okay, I mean there's no. He would be an excellent coach. I just don't know that Tennessee would embrace him. In other words, I think the Tennessee fans. Tennessee is a very conservative state, and I don't know that they would embrace the eccentricisms of Mike Leach.
Yeah, and those wear thin pretty quick if you don't get off to a hot start.
That's
right?
exactly right. If you don't win, that does.
You're either an eccentric genius or you're crazy, right?
There's a fine line between those two things. Well, let's move on and talk about something that kind of falls in line with this, because Tennessee will not be anywhere near it for a while. But that's the college football playoffs. We just got the 4 teams that were picked:
right.
Clemson, Oklahoma, Georgia, and Alabama. Okay,
right.
So give me your initial take on that.
Okay, so I mean, as it stands now, the way they have it set up, obviously, I think they made the right decision. I think that can't argue with Clemson, and same with Georgia winning the SEC championship. Same with Oklahoma, and I guess really the only thing anybody would have an argument with is the 4th spot with Alabama or Ohio State. But look, on multiple levels here, if you just look at the 2 teams and kind of their, not only, I know it's supposed to be this season, but even the program as a whole, Alabama is a stronger team than Ohio State. And then you take into the fact that Ohio State had the 30-point loss or 30-plus point loss to Iowa, which Alabama, that would not happen to Alabama. So that not only looks bad, but just provides even more data to back up the point that they're not the right choice over Alabama.
Right. And the thing, you're exactly right. I agree with everything you said. I mean, if the committee's goal is to pick the 4 best teams in the country, they got it right at this point. Okay, Alabama is a better football team than Ohio State. What I'd like to know is, Urban Meyer and the Ohio State administration must have naked pictures of all the committee and media members. And the reason I say that is because Ohio State is the darling of the media. I mean, they've been in 3 of the 4 playoffs, or most. They were in the first one. They won it, right? Last year they got beat. I mean, they've been in 2 of the 4. Okay?
Least, yeah.
All right. My point in saying it that way is that everybody wants to put Ohio State in. I mean, Ohio State can lose 1 game. They lose 2 games and don't forget about Ohio State.
Right.
What is the fascination with Ohio State? They got beat by Oklahoma at home. Granted, that looks like a pretty good loss right now.
Right.
Okay, they got hammered by Iowa, like you said. All right, all those Ohio State fans out there, and all those media people like Jesse Palmer and Joey Galloway, and even Kirk Herbstreit to a degree. Right. Okay, talking about how the Ohio State's got a better resume than Alabama. Do you not remember a year ago at this time when Penn State was the Big Ten champion and had beaten Ohio State during the season, and Ohio State got the playoff berth instead of Penn State? Because Ohio State was the, quote, better football team. Same thing happened this year. So there should be no discussion, no debate. Alabama lost 1 football game to a team that was ranked 2nd in the country.
Right.
All right, so there shouldn't be any debate.
Okay. And I totally agree. I think that if there's any debate, it should be what they should do going forward here. Because I think that, look, you have the way it is now, which, depending on the season, either works perfectly or you have some issues here and there.
It's better.
Right.
Okay.
I think that, obviously, for me, I would go to an 8-team playoff, okay, where you have your Power 5 conference winners. Mm-hmm. Okay, so if you win your conference championship, you're in the playoff. You take 2 at-large, or whatever you want to call them, wild card Conference 5 teams. Mm-hmm. And you take your top non-Power 5 team. So this year it looked like similar to how it does now, except you'd have your Ohio State would be in because they won the Big Ten, and then you'd have Alabama as an at-large, and then you'd have UCF as your top non-Power 5 team. So they'd be in as well. So I don't know how exactly the rankings would stack up. You could rank them kind of any way you wanted to, but you'd have Georgia, SEC champion. You have Oklahoma, Ohio State, USC, Pac-12 champion, and Who am I missing?
Oklahoma.
I said Oklahoma.
Clemson.
All right, ACC. So there's your 5.
Right.
Throw Alabama in there.
Right, 6.
And then throw in whoever you pick
your
whoever
other
else.
2 teams.
Auburn, Wisconsin. But UCF would get the non-Power 5 bid because they're the top. They went undefeated, so they'd get in there as well. What do you think about that scenario?
I think that's a great idea. I mean, I think that would pretty much solve the problem, I think, because then all your major conference champions would be in.
Right.
You'd have that, quote, best mid-major conference, however you want to call it, non-major conference champion. And then you'd still have 2 at-large teams that you could put in there.
Right. You were talking about another way earlier, right? There's 6 teams?
The other way you could do it is you could go with 6 teams. You could say, okay, let's take our 5 power conference champions, right? And 1 at-large team. And that 1 at-large team could be Notre Dame if they fill that bill in any particular year. It could be a UCF if you want them in there. It could be a second-place team in another conference if you want them in there. And then what you do is you take your number 1 and 2 team in the country and you give them a bye, and you play 3 through 6. And then you take your 2 winners there, pair them up with your bye teams, and play your semifinals and get to your championship. The only drawback, this is the argument you're going to hear, is that the way they've got it set up now works very nicely in the bowl structure, right? Because you got
the New Year's 6 bowls.
You got the New Year's 6 bowls. You rotate these 2 semifinal games. You're going to have to either take some of these other bowls to play these games, or you're going to have to play some of these early games at the home of the team with the better seed. See what I mean?
Yeah.
That would be the question.
Yeah, I like whatever you want to call it, the early games or the first round games at the home, and then as you progress,
you stay the way it is right now.
Take some of these bowl games in, because I like the bowls. That's kind of what makes college football unique. I'm an NFL fan first,
right.
I think, but the one fun thing about college is at the end of the season, all the bowl games and kind of the whole thing that surrounds that. So I think it's important to keep that. However you want to look at it. What do you think about when talking about conferences? Having either keeping or eliminating the divisions within the conference, because another way you can look at it is, okay, we're going to have a conference championship, but we're just going to take the top 2 seeds regardless of division. So in the SEC, it might have been just a rematch of the Iron Bowl, Alabama and Auburn, in the championship game. If you take out the division and just take the top 2 teams, or do you like the divisions?
No, I mean, you and I were talking about that a little bit earlier today, and I kind of liked it because given that scenario. Alabama would have been playing probably in their conference championship game.
Right.
Okay. Whereas under this scenario, since they didn't win their division, they couldn't play in the conference. But then again, if you look at it another way, is who would have been the top 2 teams in the SEC this year? If you'd have put all 14 teams together, okay, Alabama was 11-1,
right.
Georgia was 11-1, so they would have been the top 2, right? But then if you're an Auburn fan and you sit there and say, hey, we beat Georgia when they were number 1, we beat Alabama when they were number 1, we don't get a chance to play for our conference championship. So I like your idea. I just don't know that you'd have to tweak it somehow. You know what I mean?
Right. And it would have been Alabama, Georgia, I think.
Because they had the best record,
right?
Yeah,
I had that.
Because that's the only way you could do it, because that's how the Big 12 does it. Oklahoma played TCU because they finished 1-2 in their conference records, and that would have been how it would have been with well, actually, you would have ended up with a tie. If you just go by conference records, Georgia and Alabama and Auburn would have all just had 1 conference loss. So it would have been hard to pick your top 2.
That's right.
Yeah. See, so it'd be hard. I mean, I like the idea. I think it has a lot of merit, but you'd have to figure how you would break those ties. You know?
Right. That's a good point.
That would be the only thing that I would come up with. Yeah. But I think something has to be done. I mean, it's going back to what we talked about earlier with Mike Leach. He had a great rant on YouTube a few months ago about the playoffs. Playoffs. We talk about playoffs. Don't kid me. Major college football is the only sport that doesn't settle the championship. Well, they do now. They settle it on the field, right. But it's still, there's a question of who should be there and who shouldn't be there.
Right.
And I think that's what needs to be fixed. Is that you need to get a true representation of all your championship teams.
I guess I'm not telling my own idea, and I'm sure it's not only my idea, but that's why you need to have the conference champion get in, I guess. If you're going to have conference championship games, then, I think it's...
Well, I mean, you brought up the NFL. I mean, let's face it. at the end of an NFL season,
there's no argument.
There's no argument, right? There's
exactly.
no argument that the Super Bowl champion is the Super Bowl champion.
Right.
Okay. Well, this year, as much as I have to be honest, as much as I'm happy or satisfied that Ohio State did not get in. If I was an Ohio State fan, I would be pretty upset, right? You won your conference championship, and a team that didn't even play for its conference championship is getting in. They were in that boat last year, so that's what's got to be fixed.
Right.
You see,
right.
I mean, I think if you're gonna have 5 power conferences, somehow you got to get a system, like we talked about, where all your conference champions are playing in that playoff, okay?
Right.
And then a couple other at-large teams, kind of like your wild card teams in the NFL, that get a chance to play. And then it becomes, to me, a true championship. But again, the bowl games are the ones that cause most of the trouble because they won't relinquish, their hold on college football. Right. So that's what you run into.
All right, real quick before we finish up about college football. If we don't get a chance to discuss this in our next podcast, the bowls start this Saturday.
Correct.
Tell me who you like in these bowl games here.
All right.
R&L Carriers New Orleans Bowl, Troy, North Texas.
To quote Mike Leach,
it's a big one.
To quote Mike Leach, who cares?
Yeah, maybe we shouldn't pick them. Let's see what we got here on the slate. We have the Auto Nation Cure Bowl between Western Kentucky and who is this here? Georgia State.
Yeah, and the only people attending that game will be the parents, grandparents, girlfriends, and siblings of the players of the team.
The Las Vegas Bowl.
Great site.
Yeah, just down the street. We're recording this in Pasadena.
That's right.
Boise State and Oregon.
That's not a bad game.
Yeah. That's not bad.
Not bad.
That's something to watch on at 12:30 p.m. this Saturday. Gildan, New Mexico Bowl, Marshall, and Colorado State.
Okay.
And then you have the Raycom Media Camellia Bowl, MTSU, and Arkansas State. So we just touched on both ends of the spectrum. We have the playoffs and we have week 1 of the bowls. So we've got you covered anywhere you need it.
Well, you know what I would do? I mean, all these bowls, don't get me wrong. I mean, I think it's great for these players, okay?
Those are fun. Yeah.
They're fun, okay? But let's be honest, okay? You could probably save more money by paying each of these schools to go take a vacation at the end of the year, okay? Have a scrimmage between these two teams, okay, to get a little football in there and let them enjoy wherever you're going to go. I mean, these bowls can't be making any money. Why do you think they change them every year?
Yeah.
Why do you think they become 5-name bowls? Because you got to have so many sponsors. It's the only way you can make the thing a go.
You mean you don't think the Cherubundy Tart Cherry Boca Raton Bowl is making money? Come on.
No, I don't think it is.
Okay.
I mean, that's almost like what happened to the Walnut Bowl. What was the name of that nut? The Emerald. That's it. That's it. The Emerald Walnut Bowl. That's gone, right?
Yeah, I think they're calling that something else now, obviously. But.
Now you still have the Pinstripe Bowl at Yankee Stadium, which is probably not a bad place to play football game. I guess
that's Iowa and Boston College.
Iowa and Boston College. That'll be a good game. But really, it comes down to your big 6 bowls, right? I mean, your Sugar Bowl, your Cotton Bowl, your Orange Bowl, Fiesta Bowl, Rose Bowl, Peach Bowl, right? Those are the ones that everybody's gears towards, and those are the ones that, I mean, I guess, when I was playing college football, there weren't that many bowls out there, okay? Right. I mean, there was nowhere near. So going to a bowl game was a real reward.
That's it. Real quickly, for those who don't know, tell us about your, I guess, the process you went to in '77, how you guys got put in the bowl, and how they declared the championship.
That's a really good, because I think, like you said, some of the millennials that are listening to this think that the world we live in right now is everything. Back in the '70s, okay. First of all, there was no BCS. There was no committee. Obviously. There was just polls, right? There was an Associated Press poll. There was a poll called the United Press International, which the United Press International has since gone out of business, and that's now become the coaches poll. Okay, right. But these polls ranked every week based on the performance. So at the end of the season in 1977, Texas was undefeated, 11-0, ranked number 1. Oklahoma was ranked number 2. They had 1 loss. Alabama was ranked number 3. Michigan was ranked number 4. And Notre Dame was ranked number 5. Back then, the big bowls were tied to conference affiliations. So like it's been up.
Somewhat are.
Somewhat still are, but the Rose Bowl's always been. But the Rose Bowl took the Big Ten and the Pac-10 at that time. It was called the Pac-10.
Right.
The Sugar Bowl took the Southeastern Conference winner. The Orange Bowl took the ACC winner. The Cotton Bowl usually took the Big 12 winner, the Big 8. At that time, it was the Big 8, okay? So Texas went to the Cotton Bowl, Oklahoma went to the Orange Bowl, Alabama went to the Sugar Bowl, and Michigan went to the Rose Bowl. So Texas played. We were selected to go play Texas in the Cotton Bowl. So that's 1 against 5.
Notre Dame
was number 5. Went to play number 1 in the Cotton Bowl. Number 2, Oklahoma in the Sugar Bowl played Arkansas, who was ranked, I think, 11th or 12th.
Right.
Alabama was 3rd playing in the Sugar Bowl. Oklahoma was in the Orange Bowl. Alabama drew Ohio State, which was ranked, I think, 9th. And Michigan played Washington, which was out of the top 10. So Notre Dame beat Texas, the only undefeated team left. Oklahoma got beat by Arkansas that night in the Orange Bowl. Alabama beat Ohio State, and Michigan got beat by Washington. So Notre Dame was voted the national champion over Alabama.
Right.
Of course, it was a big stink back then because Alabama felt, hey, they were number 3. They should have gone to number 1. But again, Notre Dame beat the only undefeated team left in the country. But at that time, it was so, you talk about convoluted and so up in the air that it was based on a vote. You know, I mean, everything was done by voting.
Right. Yeah, I mean, people think there's controversy now. Talk about, like you just said, everybody plays the bowl games and then they just look and they vote on the champion.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, how would you like that now?
How would you like that?
I mean, ESPN would like that. They'd have an hour-long show about deciding national champion. That'd go well.
They would love that. Yeah, they would definitely love that. I mean, it's but what I was going to say before, I mean, you know, you guys both played college football. I mean, well, you played high school football. Our producer played college football. You know, I mean, as a player, do you really? And I don't know the answer to this question. I was going to give you my answer. If you're 6-6, do you really want to go to Detroit to play in the Motor City Bowl?
Probably not Detroit. I mean,
I don't know, but I mean,
no offense to Detroit.
More than likely, yeah. No offense to our friends in Detroit out there. If you're listening in Detroit, we love you very much. We love the Lions. We love the Pistons. We love the Tigers. All those teams. But my point is, do you really want to go? You know, yeah, you want to go to Hawaii. The Aloha Bowl would be great. But not everybody gets the opportunity to do that. Yeah, right. So that's why I'm questioning whether those bowls really have a place anymore in college football. Right. You know,
so last thing, what did you want to touch on last?
Well, I'd like to talk a little bit about the NFL.
Right.
If you'd like to do that.
Absolutely.
Okay. I mean, as you know, I'm a Giants fan.
Yes.
All right. And
just for future reference, I don't have a team I'm a diehard fan of in the NFL. I'm a fan of the league, so I support the league. You support the Giants.
Yes, I do. And you know, the Giants finally, after this miserable season, finally fired their head coach and their general manager, which I've been calling for. If you remember, I tweeted out after game 1, okay, after the Cowboys game, I tweeted out, #fire Jerry Reese, #fire the coach.
The old linebacker on Twitter.
The old linebacker on Twitter, that's right. The old linebacker. That's the old backer LB, I think is what it is.
We'll get it right.
We'll get it right. But you can find me. But yeah, the Giants, I mean, miserable season, finally fired the head coach and general manager. I mean, and here's the problem. The head coach of this team, all right, Eli Manning, 210 consecutive games as a starter.
It's a disgrace.
Yeah, he decides he's going to bench Eli Manning so that they can look at some other players, all right, which in and of itself is not a bad idea. But the way it was handled was completely wrong, okay? You go to Eli Manning, a guy that's won you 2 Super Bowls, 2 Super Bowl MVPs. Last time I checked, only 7 guys in the history of the NFL have ever won 2 Super Bowl MVPs, okay? So, and you tell this guy that we're going to start you so that your streak can stay alive, but we're pulling you at halftime. Well, Eli Manning reacted like any logical football player would. He said, no. What if we're ahead? You're going to pull me?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, so he said, no, I don't want to do that.
Right.
The backlash was unbelievable. I think that's what lost him his job. And now, of all things, now they're going to start Eli Manning again, which I think is great. But
yeah, at this point, if I'm Manning, I might as well just say, no thanks. You know, I'll see you next year in another uniform. But,
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I think Manning handled it the right way. If they came to him with that proposition, said, "Why start me from the get-go?" But the point is they should have never done that, obviously, because, like you said, the idea that what are they, 2-10?
2-10,
2-10, or going into the game they were 2-9.
Right.
That the season's lost. You want to get a look at some other guys, but they were getting a look at Geno Smith.
Right.
Who we all know
he has a resume.
He has a resume,
yeah.
right? And they weren't going to find anything out they didn't already know, and yeah, it just looked bad. And plus, Eli Manning, like you said, 2-time Super Bowl champion. That's just not. It's not the way to go about it, I don't think.
Well, I'm going to say right now, we've got a lot of listeners on our podcast, and this is only our 3rd episode. So I'm hoping that somebody out there.
Shout out to our listeners.
Yeah, shout out to our listeners. And I'm hoping that somewhere in the NFL there's a general manager or an assistant general manager that's listening to this, okay? Because you and I have talked about it. We should be general managers. And this is my point.
Okay.
You're the Giants general manager. You've been the general manager of the Giants for 10 years,
right?
Okay? How in the world, after last season, you were 11-5, okay? Yeah, you were 11-5, but your defense was playing lights out, and your offense still couldn't score over 20 points a game. They didn't score 30 points in a game all of last year, okay? Right. So you had offensive trouble last year on your offensive line. You couldn't run the football, all right? Eli Manning was getting the ball out in like 2.1 seconds because he had no protection. You go into this season, and you don't make any adjustments. You don't get any more offensive linemen. You don't improve the running game. You sign one receiver, Brandon Marshall. Okay,
I'm not sure if he's actually good anymore.
Right, exactly. But that's the one move you make. So what happens? Your offense is as bad as it was last year, if not worse, and your defense doesn't play to the same level it did last year.
Right.
So consequently, what happens? You get out of the gate 0-5. Now, what kind of a general manager can make those decisions? And this is the same general manager, by the way, that 2 years ago stood at the press conference and had the gall to fire Tom Coughlin, or to say that, all right, it wasn't Tom Coughlin's fault.
Right.
If you're listening out there, Tom, I support you, okay? You should still be the coach of the New York Giants because he was made the scapegoat. It's like what was the movie we saw that maybe it was an old Hard Knocks thing. He goes, you want me to make chicken salad out of you know what, right? Yeah. I mean, it's hard to do that, okay? Yeah. It's hard to do that, right? And that's why he deserved to lose his job. And I don't understand. To me, there's a few franchises that get it right every year, okay? Pittsburgh is always in the running. New England is always in the running. The Ravens are always in the hunt for the playoffs. Yeah. The Packers are always in the hunt for the playoffs, right? Okay? Seahawks lately. How come those teams can at least be in the hunt? I mean, if you were a fan of a particular team, like I am, you don't expect your team to win the Super Bowl every year or even be there every year, but you want them to be in the hunt, right? You don't want to be 6-10, 5-11, 2-10.
Right. Well, all those teams you just named is what the Giants had, which is a stable coach and quarterback, and it seems like they're kind of turning the page on that and trying to start over, which is not as easy as they might think it's going to be.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right, because now you're facing a situation where, you're probably going to have the second pick in the draft, the Giants.
As of right now, they have the second. The 49ers are still lurking there, but we'll give them the second as of right now. We'll say it's the second.
Yeah, I think it probably will end up being that way. So they're going to have to make a decision. I mean, either they're going to have to find out that this kid, Davis Webb, who they drafted last year, they're going to have to give him some playing time, find out if he's the guy, or else they're going to have to pick one of these guys coming out of college.
Yeah, I think I'd go with it. Well, you're going to have some free agents this offseason. You're going to have Cousins out there available. You're going to have, who else? There's other guys.
Oh, there's lots of guys.
Names escape me right now. But there's this. It's not going to be a bad quarterback free agent class. No. There's going to be one or two guys out there they could potentially get.
But if you
Garoppolo is going to be a free agent, you got to think the 49ers are going to lock him up soon if they already haven't.
I would think so. I would think so. And if you're the Giants, if you're going to go after Kirk Cousins, you're going to have to cut Manning. You can't afford $225 million.
I'm assuming that they've moved on because I think that's kind of the message they've sent. I don't think you can bring Manning back next year and say, you're the starter. We believe in you.
No, but I do believe, I said this at the start of the year. I said it last year, is that I think Eli Manning, with the right team around him, okay, with the right offensive line and the running game, has 2 or 3 productive years left. Okay,
yeah, I agree with that.
And I think you could bring in a guy and groom him, like the Packers did with Aaron Rodgers. Right. I mean, for all the faults of the Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre, infighting, those years that he sat behind Brett Favre helped him tremendously.
Yeah, same with Garoppolo and Brady, and Manning's had half a season behind Warner. I mean, he didn't get thrown right into the fire.
Exactly.
So there's something to be said for that, for sure.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, you being the Giants fan. Would you like to see that? Would you like to see him bring Manning back and say draft the guy from USC, Darnold, or one of these guys, and say, hey, you're going to sit for 1 or 2 years?
Yes.
Do you think that's their best option?
Yes, I think it is. I think what I would do, the first thing I would do is upgrade the offensive line. You got to upgrade the offensive line. Get a decent running back. Just like the Cowboys drafted Ezekiel Elliott in the first round, get you a good running back, okay? Run the football like they did in 07 and 08 and 09, all right? And then you can protect Manning. He can throw the football the way you get. Odell Beckham will be back healthy. Sterling Shepard will be back healthy. Mm-hmm. And then you can start producing a little bit, becoming a contender, and then you groom this young guy behind Manning. After a couple years, he takes over, and Manning rides off into the sunset. Maybe with another Super Bowl if they get lucky. But either way, I think that's the best move for the Giants. I really do.
All right. Well, so lastly, as far as coaches, what are some names you'd like to see? As far as I would think they would hire the GM first. That seems to be.
I think that's what the owner said at the press conference.
All right. Yeah. So obviously, with the fact the GMs out there, the GM pool, the names aren't as well known, so we're not going to speculate as much there. But just in terms of coaching, I've heard Nick Saban's name been thrown out there a little bit. If he would want to come, I'd like to see him come back to the NFL. I mean, Pete Carroll did it. After having college success, but I don't think he will. But it'd be interesting to see. What are some names you'd like to see?
Well, I think
my first call would be to Marty Schottenheimer. But that's just me.
Well, in all fairness to you, Marty Schottenheimer, I saw a piece on him in one of the NFL shows. He's got Alzheimer's right now, so I'm not sure that he would remember some.
Are we sure Ben McAdoo didn't?
That's right. Good point. Touche on that one. I tell you, I'd like to see him go after John Gruden. I sound like a Tennessee fan now, don't I?
But I'd say he'd be more likely to go there than he would Tennessee.
I think he would. That's exactly right.
I don't know.
But he would be one that I would like to see them go after. Let me pie in the sky here. What about Bill Belichick? Go after Bill. He's an ex-Giant guy.
He is an ex-Giant.
He did win 2 Super Bowls with the Giants as their defensive coordinator, right? Bring him over there. That would be awesome, but obviously that's not going to happen. But yeah, there's a lot of guys out there. They're probably going to end up getting a coordinator. One of these guys that's a current defensive coordinator or offensive coordinator at one of these teams.
Do you think more of my first thought was the younger guy, but not necessarily, but a guy that doesn't have a few head coaching stops? Do you think more of just an up and coming coordinator?
Yeah, I think that's kind of been the trend. Look at the Rams. They hired this guy that was the coordinator with the Redskins. Wasn't he with the Redskins?
Yeah, it was Redskins.
Yeah, and he's done a tremendous job. Yeah. So I don't think age becomes that big of a deal. I think it's more relations to the players, relationship, system, philosophy, and coaches you bring in. One of the guy that went to the Rams. McVay. First thing he did, hey, Wade Phillips is going to be my defensive coordinator.
That's a good move. Yeah.
All right. So if he can show you that he can bring in some guys to run the offense and defense that are quality guys, I don't think it makes any difference if you go after a young guy. Yeah, but I think the general manager has to be in place first. And before I forget, here's another thing the Giants did not do well that the Patriots do extremely well. This guy Jerry Reese, that was the Giants general manager. He was notorious for just making his picks as they came. First round, second round, third round, fourth round, fifth round, bang.
No trading.
No trading. Yeah. Exactly. You got to package stuff. You know what I mean? Take those 6 picks and turn them into 10, okay? Because that's where the bulk of your team is built. It's in the third, fourth, and fifth rounds. Yeah. And we saw a stat together that said the Giants, since he's been there, over the last 6 years, I guess, they've only had one guy in the third to the fifth rounds that is still with the team or that's made the Pro Bowl. Yeah. Right? You can't have that. Right? That's where your team is built. Right. Because you're not going to get an Odell Beckham every year. Yeah. Right? So.
Yeah, and just to close, I think obviously they should wait till after the season to make this hire because you never know who could become available. Who says the Chiefs don't let Andy Reid go or somebody like that? They're collapsing, but not that they.
And Andy Reid does look good in blue, better in blue than he does in black.
Yeah, so I'm just saying there's going to be some names out there that they may not think would be available, will become available. So it'll be interesting. We'll talk about this again though, that's for sure.
We definitely will. Definitely will.
So this is good. So like I said, no guests today, but. Pressbox Podcast will return.
We will return, and we'll have plenty more guests. And as I tweeted out, those of you that follow us on Twitter, we've got potential guests coming on, right? Derek Hunt still going to be one of our guests.
Yeah, I don't want to get into too many names. We'll have some good guests coming up. Right. You said on Twitter, that's Pressbox Podcast on Twitter.
Pressbox Podcast. Pressbox
My
Pod.
bad. Our producer's telling us Pressbox Pod.
That's
Pressbox
the
Pod on
Twitter
Twitter.
handle,
Follow
right.
us on Twitter.
You can listen to us on Libsyn.com.
Right.
Pressbox Podcast.
Subscribe on iTunes as well. If you subscribe on iTunes, you'll get the episodes as soon as they're downloaded. You don't have to wait for them to upload. So subscribe on iTunes, Libsyn. Also get us on Stitcher, and be sure to continue to check out the Fox Sports Knoxville's Twitter feed, as they'll post our latest episodes on their SoundCloud feed as well.
Exactly. We enjoyed having you. For all our listeners out there, thanks a lot. We'll see you next time.
All right.